10%. 10%? Garrick's laughter bounced violently off the glass walls of his corner office, sharp and cutting, like it was meant to bruise. "You're asking for a 10% raise?" he said between laughs. "After what, 12 years?" He couldn't even finish the sentence before another wave of amusement shook him. I stood there, stiff, unmoving, clutching my portfolio so tightly my fingers ached. 60 pages of proof. Every algorithm I had written, every optimization I had engineered, every system that ran because I'd sacrificed nights, weekends, and sleep, while he collected bonuses large enough to buy vacation homes outright. "The system I built cut delivery times in half," I said, my voice quieter than I wanted it to be. "The Eastwood account alone—" Garrick waved a hand lazily, still grinning as he leaned back in his chair. "Everyone's replaceable," he said, "even you." Then came that practiced CEO smile, polished and empty, never reaching his eyes. "If you think you're worth more, go test the market." Something inside me fractured. Not my heart, something deeper. The foundation itself. 12 years of belief. 12 years of trusting that loyalty mattered, that hard work eventually spoke loud enough to be heard. "I understand," I said softly, gathering my portfolio. The pages shook as I tucked it under my arm. "Listen," Garrick added, his voice shifting into manufactured concern. "You're good at what you do, but you're back office. The board doesn't even know your name. That's just business." That was the moment everything crystallized. I'm Ivy, 34 years old, supply chain algorithm specialist. And until that moment, I had been pathologically afraid of confrontation. The kind of woman who apologizes when someone bumps into her. The woman who stayed at the same company for 12 years, earning 20% below market value, because I believed in loyalty, because I believed my work would eventually speak for itself. Before I go any further into this story, I'd really appreciate it if you'd take a moment to tell me in the comments where you're watching from. This happened in the Midwest, but I'd love to know if stories like this resonate everywhere. And if you've ever lived through something similar, please like and subscribe, because what comes next might save you years of your life. I walked back to my cubicle, yes, cubicle after 12 years, passing glass-walled offices belonging to managers who had been there half as long as I had. My desk sat isolated in the far corner of the 5th floor, surrounded by empty workstations. Our department had once been 15 people, now it was 3. Not because the work had decreased, but because my systems had automated so much of it out of existence. On my monitor blinked an email notification, the quarterly company newsletter. The headline praised Garrick's innovative supply chain overhaul that saved our biggest client, Eastwood. My overhaul, my 18-hour days for 6 straight months. My solution that slashed logistics costs by 40%. Beside my keyboard sat a cup of cold coffee I'd abandoned 3 hours earlier, when I'd finally gathered the courage to ask for that raise. Next to it stood a framed photo of my parents. My dad worked 35 years at the same factory before it shut down. "Loyalty matters," he always said. My mom always nodded, believing it too. I opened my drawer and pulled out a small leather notebook. Inside were ideas I'd been quietly developing for years, personal projects, carefully dated, time-stamped, and detailed. Concepts I explored on weekends, refined at home, built on my own laptop. Ideas the company had implemented without formal acquisition because I'd been too accommodating, too eager to prove my value. I flipped to an entry from 3 years ago, a set of predictive algorithms that became the backbone of our entire distribution network. At the top of the page, my handwriting read, "Personal Project, Supply Chain Optimization Through Predictive Modeling, began 11/4, Home System." What Garrick never realized, and what the company's legal team never bothered to verify, was that I had never signed over ownership of these innovations. The employment contract only covered work done during company hours, using company equipment. My most valuable work lived outside those boundaries. I picked up my phone and scrolled to a number I had saved but never dialed. Hayden, operations director at our biggest competitor. He'd reached out more than once.
His last message 6 months ago read, "The offer still stands whenever you're ready. We value innovators here." My thumb hovered over the call button. 12 years of loyalty screamed at me to stop, to be reasonable, to avoid burning bridges. Then came that practiced CEO smile, polished and empty, never reaching his eyes. "If you think you're worth more, go test the market." Pressed call. "Hayden speaking?" "This is Ivy Reeves from Porter Logistics Solutions," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I think it's finally time we talked." "Ivy," he said, excitement clear in his tone. "I was starting to think you'd never call. Are you free for dinner tonight?" 5 hours later, I sat across from him in a restaurant that normally required reservations weeks in advance. One call from him and a table was waiting. "I've been following your work for years," he said, watching me over his water glass. "Or rather, I've been watching the sudden jumps in Porter's performance that line up perfectly with gaps in your LinkedIn activity. Those supply chain algorithms for Eastwood were revolutionary." My chest tightened. "How did you know that was me?" Hayden smiled. "Because Garrick doesn't have the technical understanding to build or even comprehend systems like that. And when we tried to reverse engineer them and failed, we knew we needed the mind behind them." "What exactly are you offering?" I asked. "Leadership role, triple your salary, stock options, your own team." Then he leaned in. "And full credit for your work." "And my personal innovations?" I asked. "Systems I developed on my own time with my own equipment?" He paused, then nodded. "We have a formal IP acquisition process with fair compensation. We don't claim what doesn't belong to us." I placed my leather notebook on the table. "I have proof." His eyes widened slightly as he realized the implications. That's a major oversight on their part. Garrick doesn't value back-office departments, including legal. 2 weeks later, I placed my resignation letter on Garrick's desk. 2 weeks' notice, he muttered. "Where are you going?" "Radius Shipping Solutions." His head snapped up. "Our competitor? That's unfortunate timing. We're finalizing a major Eastwood expansion." "I know, I designed the delivery model." "We can talk retention, that raise." "The offer from Radius is triple my salary, a leadership role and stock options." "They're overpaying," he scoffed. "You'll disappoint them." "We'll see." My final 2 weeks passed quietly. I trained my replacement, a nervous recent graduate, documented transitions, and backed up every personal project. At my exit interview, Vance slid standard paperwork across the table. "I'm not signing the non-compete," I said calmly, "and I'm not taking company property. I am taking my personal intellectual property." Vance's face changed as he reviewed my documentation. "These systems are everything." "Yes." "I need to make some calls." "My employment ends today," I replied, standing. "My property leaves with me." I walked out at 5:17 p.m. on a Friday.
By Monday, I was in my new corner office at Radius. 6 weeks later, our systems went live. Delivery times dropped 30%. Costs fell 25%. Then came Garrick's voicemail. Then his desperation. Then his offer to double anything Radius paid. "You said everyone's replaceable," I told him. "I'm just following your philosophy." Porter's stock fell 62%. 200 employees were laid off. Garrick resigned. Then came the lawsuit. Porter sued me for theft of intellectual property. Their case collapsed when my documentation proved the core algorithms were developed as personal projects. The judge dismissed the suit, noting that Porter had failed to secure ownership of the innovations they had used. The morning after the dismissal, Garrick appeared in my office at Radius, looking nothing like the confident CEO who had once mocked me. "You destroyed everything," he said, standing in the doorway. "No," I corrected him. "You did that when you decided people were disposable." His voice trembled. Those people who lost their jobs, they weren't just numbers. They had families, mortgages. I felt the weight of his words, the moral complexity pressing at my conscience. "I know that. That's why Radius has hired 57 former Porter employees in the last 3 months. The people who suffered because of your arrogance shouldn't pay for your mistakes." Garrick stared at me, searching my face. "You planned all of this?" "No," I said softly.
I just stopped letting myself be undervalued. I held his gaze, unwavering. You could have avoided this entire downfall with just a 10% raise and a bit of respect. He left without another word. From my office window, I watched him cross the parking lot, shoulders slumped, the former CEO of what was once the industry leader. That evening, I received an email from Eastwood's procurement director. The implementation exceeded our expectations. Delivery times are 40% better than our previous provider. The board has approved expanding our contract with Radius. I forwarded it to Hayden with a short note. This is just the beginning. My name now appears on the algorithm patents. My picture hangs in the lobby beside other Radius executives. My team has grown to 15 people, including many former Porter employees who now receive the recognition and pay they always deserved. Sometimes I think about those who lost their jobs at Porter and couldn't find new ones. The collateral damage of Garrick's arrogance. It's the weight I carry, knowing that justice for one person can bring hardship to others who were simply in the wrong place. But I also remember that day in Garrick's office when he laughed at my request for basic fairness after years of loyalty. How many others had he treated the same way? How many careers had he stunted with his belief that people were replaceable parts in his corporate machine? 6 months into my new role at Radius, the full effect of my decision was still unfolding. Porter's stock hadn't recovered. Industry analysts were writing case studies about their disastrous talent management failure. Meanwhile, Radius had captured 23% of Porter's market share. My office phone rang one Tuesday afternoon. The receptionist's voice was uncertain. "There's someone here to see you. She says she worked at Porter." When I walked to the lobby, I found Marlene standing there. She'd been Porter's head of customer service for 15 years, longer than I had been there. We'd shared lunches, venting about Garrick's leadership style. Now she clutched her purse tightly, her knuckles white. "Ivy," she said, her voice trembling, "I thought maybe we could talk." I brought her to my office, offered her water or coffee, but she refused. "I lost my job last week," she said flatly, "along with my entire department, 37 people." The weight of her words sank deep in my chest. "Marlene, I'm so sorry." "Are you?" Her eyes locked on mine. "Everyone says you're the reason Porter's falling apart, that you stole something and brought it here." "I didn't steal anything," I told her, explaining my documentation, the court ruling, all of it. She listened silently. "I'm 56 years old, Ivy. Who's going to hire me now?" I leaned forward. "Radius will. We need experienced customer service leadership. I can talk to Hayden today." She shook her head. "I didn't come here for a job." "Then why did you come?" Marlene's gaze drifted around my office. The view, the polished furniture, the nameplate on my door. "I wanted to see if it was worth it, if what you got was worth what happened to the rest of us." Her words hit me like a stone. Was it worth it? The recognition, the compensation, the validation, weighed against the pain of those who had done nothing wrong except stay at the wrong company. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," I said softly. "I just wanted what I'd earned." "We all want that," Marlene replied, standing up. "Some of us just can't take an entire company down when we don't get it." After she left, I sat still staring at the wall. My phone buzzed. A text from Hayden. Quarterly numbers exceeded projections by 18%. Celebration dinner tonight. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and created a new spreadsheet. In the first column, I listed every Porter employee I knew who'd lost their job. Next to each name, I searched LinkedIn, noting their experience and skills. By midnight, I had a list of 212 people. The next morning, I walked into Hayden's office without knocking. "We need to talk about Porter's former employees." He looked up from his monitor. "What about them?" I placed my spreadsheet on his desk. "These are people who lost their jobs because of Porter's collapse. Radius has benefited enormously from what happened. We have a responsibility," I said firmly. He studied the list in front of him. "We've already hired quite a few." "Not enough," I replied, sitting across from him. I want to propose a formal recruitment initiative focused on Porter's displaced employees. And for those we can't bring on directly, I want to fund placement support and retraining programs. Hayden leaned back, examining me carefully. That's an expensive plan for people who don't even work here. It's an investment in our reputation and in our future, I countered, and it's the right thing to do. After a long pause, he nodded. Draft the proposal. I'll take it to the board. 3 weeks later, Operation Rebound launched. Radius pledged to interview every qualified former Porter employee. We partnered with 3 training firms to provide skill upgrades for those needing transition help. For employees nearing retirement, we created flexible consulting roles. The industry noticed. Business publications highlighted Radius's groundbreaking approach to competitive displacement. Applications for open positions rose by 300%. Clients began mentioning our corporate responsibility efforts during negotiations. Marlene called the day after the announcement. Was this your idea? Yes, I admitted. Would you reconsider joining Radius? A brief silence. Maybe as a consultant, not full-time. I'm too old to start over completely. We need your experience. Name your terms. 2 days later, she was setting up in an office just down the hall from mine. Not everyone was as understanding. Jason, Porter's former operations manager, ignored my calls. Patrice, from accounting, sent a scathing email about loyalty and betrayal. I saved it in a folder labeled Consequences, my growing reminder that revenge is never as clean as it looks in the movies. 6 months after I'd left Porter, I received an unexpected message from Vance, their former legal counsel. Coffee? There's something you should know. We met at a quiet cafe halfway between our offices. Vance looked older.
New lines around his eyes, gray at his temples. I was let go last month, he said, stirring his coffee. Part of the latest cuts. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. Radius is hiring legal. He shook his head. That's not why I wanted to meet. It's about your algorithms and your documentation. My stomach tightened. The court already ruled on that. I know, he said, leaning closer, and they ruled correctly, but there's something you don't know. After your exit interview, when you mentioned your personal projects, I went straight to Garrick. I told him we should review your claims before taking any action. He showed me some old emails, and from 3 years back, you had sent him detailed explanations of your algorithms, asking if the company wanted to acquire them formally. You even suggested fair compensation. I froze, coffee halfway to my lips. I don't remember that. You CC'd me, he said quietly. I found the chain during legal prep. Garrick replied, dismissing the idea. Said something like, just implement it if it works. We'll handle the details later. My chest tightened. He knew all along. Vance nodded slowly. He knew exactly what you had built, that you'd logged it as personal work, and that the company never acquired it properly. When you left and Radius started using your systems, he came to legal demanding we sue you, even after I showed him his own emails, proving otherwise. He insisted anyway. Vance took a sip of coffee, his voice heavy. That's when I realized Porter deserved what it got. I leaned back, letting the revelation settle. Why tell me this now? Because you should understand something, he said, meeting my eyes. What happened to Porter wasn't just about you taking your intellectual property. It was about years of systemic arrogance. Garrick didn't just undervalue you, he did it to everyone. Legal, operations, customer service. He treated the entire company like replaceable machinery. I exhaled slowly, and now those parts are working somewhere else. Vance gave a faint, tired smile. Exactly. Your algorithms were brilliant, but Porter wouldn't have fallen apart if Garrick had built a company strong enough to survive losing one person. He didn't just lose you, Vance had said. He lost the loyalty and experience of hundreds who felt the same way. I thought about that on my drive back to Radius. My revenge hadn't destroyed Porter, it had only exposed what was already broken. That evening, my phone rang again. Garrick. My first instinct was to ignore it, but this time I answered. Ivy. His voice was rough, strained. I'm calling to apologize. Of all the things I expected, that wasn't one of them. I'm listening, I said carefully. I knew about your personal projects, he admitted after a pause. I knew you documented them properly. I just thought you were too loyal to ever leave, so it didn't matter. You misjudged me, I replied quietly. I misjudged everything. The confession seemed to cost him something. The board removed me yesterday. Porter's filing for Chapter 11 next week. Bankruptcy. I hadn't imagined it would go that far. I'm sorry about the employees, I said softly. That's why I'm calling, he continued. There's a final board meeting tomorrow. They're deciding severance packages. I want to recommend your Radius program for our remaining staff. You want to send Porter's employees to Radius? I asked, surprised. I want them to have jobs, Garrick said simply. Pride doesn't matter anymore. After we hung up, I walked to the window, gazing at the city lights. 12 years at Porter, unseen, 8 months at Radius, and everything had changed, not just for me, but for the entire industry. The next day, Porter announced its bankruptcy filing. By afternoon, Radius was flooded with calls from Porter's former clients. Our sales team was overwhelmed. Hayden called an emergency meeting. We need to scale fast, he said. Ivy, your rebound program is now priority 1. Hire every qualified Porter employee we can. Within a month, Radius had absorbed 173 former Porter staff. We expanded into 3 new offices. My team grew to 40 people, many who once sat in the same gray cubicles as me. Marlene became our Chief Customer Experience Officer. Jason eventually joined as an operations consultant. Even Vance came aboard to lead our growing legal department. A year after walking out of Garrick's office, clutching my portfolio, I stood on a stage accepting the Industry Innovation Award. Cameras flashed as I looked over a sea of familiar faces. Former Porter colleagues now proudly wearing Radius badges. Innovation isn't just about algorithms or systems, it's about valuing people, treating them as irreplaceable, not disposable. The companies that understand this will always rise above those that don't. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me, nervous flickering in her smile. Ms. Reeves, I'm Tessa. I just joined Radius as an algorithm developer. Welcome to the team, Tessa, I said warmly. She clutched a portfolio, the same kind I once held in Garrick's office. Can I ask, how did you know when to stand up for yourself? I don't want to make the same mistakes. I thought for a moment before answering. I waited 12 years too long, I said. Don't do that. But aren't you afraid of being seen as difficult or ungrateful? I smiled. Those are just words people use when they want to pay you less than you're worth. As Tessa walked away, I saw Garrick standing near the exit. Our eyes met across the room. He nodded once. Acknowledgement, maybe. Respect? I nodded back. He had lost everything, yet gained something too. Understanding. And I had gained everything I'd worked for, but carried the weight of how it all came to be. We were both changed by that single moment of laughter over a 10% raise request. 2 years after leaving Porter, I received an unexpected package. Inside was a framed Wall Street Journal article analyzing Porter's collapse and Radius's rise. A note was attached. You were never replaceable. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Garrick. I hung it in my office as a reminder that value isn't defined by others, it's something you must recognize in yourself first. Last month, I launched a mentorship program for women in tech. Our first workshop focused on salary negotiation and protecting intellectual property. 300 women attended. Marlene helped organize it, and Tessa, now leading her own team, was one of our speakers. At the end, a participant asked, "Don't you feel bad about what happened to Porter?" I considered the question carefully. I feel responsible for my actions, but not guilty for claiming what was rightfully mine. That difference matters. Looking back, I realized true revenge wasn't watching Porter collapse or Garrick lose his position. It wasn't even my corner office or the industry award. Real revenge was discovering my own worth and refusing to let anyone devalue it again. It was creating a workplace where people like me, people like who I used to be, would never have to wait 12 years for recognition. If you're watching this and questioning your own value at work, remember loyalty is admirable, but it must flow both ways. Document your achievements, know your worth, and never apologize for asking to be valued properly. The algorithms I created were complex, but the lesson is simple. No one defines your value. You do. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button. Share it with someone who might be sitting in a cubicle right now wondering if they should speak up. Subscribe if you want more stories about finding your voice in places designed to silence it. And leave a comment telling me if you've ever had to make that choice between loyalty and self-worth. Because sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply refuse to be replaceable.